All right, so where were you in your life before you got this or before you started Elevate?
So actually, I had unfortunately fallen quite ill. I had just recently gotten married, had been home from our honeymoon for 4 days, and I woke up in the middle of the night extremely sick with heart attack-like symptoms, and I ended up in the hospital and then spent 3.5 months in and out of the hospital before they were actually finally able to identify my issues and take care of them with surgery. In that 3.5 months, I had a lot of downtime. I couldn't work much. I was very ill, and I had a few scary moments. And the scary moments caused me to kind of reflect on my life, where I was at in my life at that point, and what I was really doing. It made the prospect of death more real to me, and made me realize that maybe I wasn't fulfilling everything that I felt like I should be in my life, and I wasn't leaving the legacy that I wanted to leave. I've always believed in giving back and being philanthropic. I've always believed in trying to make an impact and be, have a positive impact in the world. And several years back, I had a bit of an idea of doing retreats to exotic locations, taking leaders, executives, their teams and their families, and combining it with humanitarian service. And it just so happened that probably about a year before I fell ill, I met Elan's Door, who is my co-founder with Elevate International. Elan's Door is an amazing person. He's dedicated most of his adult life to initiatives that give back. And he's been doing a version of what we do at Elevate International for the past 15 or 20 years in the Dominican Republic and in Haiti. And I had met Elan's. I immediately loved what he was doing. In fact, I took him to dinner and said, Elan's, look, I really like what you're doing. I would love to be a part of it. I've had some ideas that are very similar to what you are doing, and I said at some point I want to launch some sort of project along these lines. I would rather not compete with you, but I'd rather find a way to work with you. I said, and I told him at the time, I don't have the time or resources right now to dedicate to it, but when the time comes, I want you to know that I support you, and hopefully you'll be interested in having me help you out. And so when I fell ill, it was a really good opportunity to kind of reevaluate my life, and I'd always kind of use the excuse of I'm so busy, right? I have 3 kids. I have a business or multiple businesses that I run. I have some resources and I give those where I can, but they're not limitless either. My time is definitely not limitless. And so I kind of always said I don't have enough time or resources to really do what I felt like I wanted to do and to really be impactful. And falling ill, and having some experiences where I wasn't sure what was going to happen, really made me evaluate and say, am I fulfilling and it might sound corny, but am I fulfilling my life mission? Am I leaving the legacy that I have always wanted and felt like I should leave to the world? And my own answer to myself was no. And there's no time better than the present. Once my health is good enough, to begin to take the time to do something that I felt was more impactful. And so, really, it was opportune as well, because having to take 3.5 months mostly away from work was a very good opportunity for me and for my team at Nexus IT to realize that I don't have to be ingrained in the ins and outs of every single day, that I have great leaders within my organization. I have great people that are capable, that can be trusted to do things without me day in and day out. And so it was a good opportunity to say, okay, I can take some time and take some resources to try to do something that I feel like is going to help people and do something impactful in the world. If you don't mind, I'll address perhaps maybe what we do first so that it makes sense. And so we go on these fantastic, amazing retreats to beautiful locations. We have downtime, and we enjoy our host countries and activities and excursions and whatever those might be. What depending upon what the guests are interested in, it could be zip lining, it could be a jungle tour, it could be dolphin watching or whale watching, it could be a hike through a jungle and a beach or something like that. I mean, there's all sorts of activities. We have downtime. We enjoy things like natural hot springs and just really amazing, beautiful places. But really, the core mission of Elevate International is to make an impact in the lives of at-risk children. And so Elans and I, as we began to collaborate, and when I went back to him after falling ill and said, okay, Elans, I think the time is now for me to contribute where I can, and he was on board, and we decided to create a new organization, a new project, rebrand, and brainstormed. We decided that we wanted our focus to be on at-risk children. And particularly, Elans and I have a lot of connection to Latin America. We've spent a lot of time in Latin America, and we happen to know that the statistics stack against orphans and at-risk children in Latin America. We happen to know that most kids are turned out of an orphanage at the age of 17. And with really no resources to provide for themselves in any way. Some countries do better than others, but in many countries, if they've been fortunate enough to even be in an orphanage at the age of 17, they're turned out. And because of circumstances, so many of those kids end up on the streets. They end up involved in crime and in drugs and alcohol, oftentimes to subsist. So we decided that we wanted to take people who have learned how to win in life, people who have learned to be successful, people who have been influential, who have been leaders, who have had an impact in people's lives in their own communities and domestically. We wanted to take those same people and together contribute and make an impact in the lives of kids who have been dealt a really rotten stack of cards, right? And so we can come back, and talk a little bit about the orphans and what we do there. But for our guests that go with us on these retreats, for their teams and their families, it is a life-changing experience. It's an experience that creates bonds beyond any other experience. When we go and we give unconditional love to kids who need it, and we let them know that somebody cares about them beyond who is in their close circle of influence around them, and we try to give them resources and ideas and skills and knowledge that will help them not become part of the statistics, but to excel and exceed in life and to reach their dreams, whatever success means to them, right? And so it's a really, really amazing experience, and it's not just the leaders and their teams and their families, but the other leaders that are in the groups. We all form really amazing bonds and generally become lifelong friends because when you do this type of thing, it really just it makes you more vulnerable. Maybe it gets to a more raw sense of who we are, and I think it's a very good opportunity at that point for bonds and relationships to be made, and they're made stronger. We've had families come away from these type of experiences, or teams come away that really walk away with a renewed sense of their unit, whatever that might be, and really thankful for their lives and their circumstances and their situations, and the fact that they've also been able to contribute and give and hopefully make a positive impact in the life of a child who has some difficult circumstances to deal with.
And could you tell me more specifics about the adventure, excursion, thrilling side of the retreat as well?
Sure, and that entirely depends upon the level of adventure of our guests or the group. We do have regularly scheduled retreats as well as custom retreats that we do for individual organizations, and so sometimes you might get a group who is a more senior group who would rather do some more calm sightseeing and spend some time on beaches and things like that. And then sometimes you get a group who's very adventurous and who wants to go rappelling and river rafting and zip lining and rock climbing up waterfalls and things like that. So the countries that we visit have literally an endless amount of possible activities, and so as we put together the retreats and we have guests on board, then we coordinate and collaborate with those guests on what sort of activities they want to do. We actually, in many situations, we hand them a menu of activities for the activities days, and then they simply select which activities they want to do. So let's say we take a group of 30 people. You might end up with those 30 people broke up into 8 or 10 different activities. And so before we ever go on the retreat, they select the activities they want to be involved in. The transportation shows up to pick them up in the morning at the hotel and take them to do their activities. So we're not always together as a group during activity days because sometimes people want experience too.
And what specific impacts are they making in the lives of those kids?
Very good. So there's a lot of organizations out there that go and will do building projects and dig wells and those types of things. And those are fantastic, amazing organizations. They're very necessary. Our objective has been to have a direct impact in the lives of the children. So we don't go and do manual labor and do building projects. We have some educational programs that we do that include workplace skills, computer skills, English, entrepreneur skills, and then just some personal and professional development, some ideas to help the children change mindsets I've been dealt a bad batch of cards. My life is terrible. It will never be anything more than this failure that it is now. And we work to help them change that mindset into, I can do anything I want in my life. I am powerful beyond measure, right? And whatever I'm willing to put my mind to and to put my efforts towards, I can achieve in life. I can be successful, whatever that success is for me. And I can be a winner in my life, and I don't have to fall victim to my own circumstances. And so those are the types of programs that we do with the kids. We generally spend, depending upon the length of the retreats, 1 to 2 to 3 days with the kids. We have some educational programs, and then we simply serve them as well. We might play some soccer. We might go to the beach if there's an opportunity to do that and play with them. We might play some baseball or something, or some volleyball. We help cook meals. We help serve them their meals. We'll sit down and eat with them and get to know them better. And really just our objective is to let them know that they have a friend, and that they have people who care about them, and that we're there to, as people who have experienced some success in life and learned how to win, we're there to help them become, we can, and this is, we invite our guests, if they so choose, to choose a child or two that they want to continue a long-term relationship with, that they want to maintaining contact with that child so that they can become a mentor, they can become a resource to that child when they're facing challenges, when they're stuck and when they potentially need some outside help, some other perspective from somebody who maybe has gone through some difficult circumstances of their own and figured out
in such a different way that everybody else seems to be doing, in a very practical, this is how you can sort of get into the workforce, which is not really something that they get from any other source, right?
Right. Yeah.
So people who know what they're doing, going and saying, this is my personal experience.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the children in the majority of situations are in school. They're being educated. Sometimes they're in rural communities with very limited resources, very limited education. But they are receiving education, but they aren't receiving day-to-day life skills in most cases, and certainly they're not receiving skills of thought patterns and I was born into failure and therefore my life is going to be failure, right? Is kind of the way that they're programmed to think. And there's few of them without the help of other resources and people teaching them that doesn't have to be their reality. There's few of them that can rise above. And so we're trying to connect those dots of just because you were born into rough circumstances doesn't mean that has to be your trajectory for the rest of your life. I should mention we do, despite the fact that we don't go and do manual labor, we do look for opportunities to fund projects. So, for example, in Dominican Republic, we're working with an orphanage that the roof on the orphanage is literally a black piece of plastic. So on our next return trip, beginning next year, we have built into our retreat a budget that will allow us to pay for the materials and a local contractor to put a roof on that building. We don't go do the work ourselves, but we do fund the project, and we do have local liaisons who oversee to make sure that things are done correctly, that there's no misappropriation of funds and things like that, and that we're doing something that is benefiting, blessing the lives of the children beyond just the one-on-one interaction and the friendship and mentorship.
That's great. How does it feel to see that impact in someone's life?
It's really amazing. Really, from the moment we walk through the doors and you're received by the children with as much as we extend our unconditional love to them, it doesn't compare to the unconditional love they extend immediately. And it's amazing. Oftentimes, these children that have grown up in very difficult circumstances. Some have come from backgrounds of abuse and drug abuse, and some lost their parents to some tragedy or whatever the circumstances might be. They've come from very difficult situations and definitely have reason to be guarded and to not trust and to not simply throw their arms open and extend their love to you. But without fail, almost 100% of the kids do every single time as soon as you walk through the door. As soon as you walk through the door and the people who run the orphanages introduce you as people from the United States, businessmen from the United States, they're so incredibly thrilled to accept you and that you're there to see them. And that's just the start, right? When you can actually begin to make a more meaningful impact in their lives by giving them education and ideas and helping them change and train thought patterns that can help them win in life, then the impact becomes real. It becomes more significant. And we're in our inception here. While Elan's has been doing humanitarian service retreats to the Dominican Republic and Haiti for about 20 years, our new concept of working directly with at-risk children and these educational programs is somewhat new. So we haven't seen exactly what this is going to look like in a child's life 10 or 15 years down the road. But we have seen that in the short time period that we've been doing this, we've seen positive impact. And we've seen kids who potentially didn't have any hope before, didn't have hope for their lives. And that's a really horrible, awful thing. When people have no hope, and we've seen that change in kids. We've seen them have hope that that there's something more out there for me than the circumstances I've done. There have been people who have been extremely elated, right, and really buy into the idea and love it. There have been naysayers, of course. By and large, the local community that is involved in similar activities, other local charities, nonprofit organizations that are doing things impactful throughout the world and in our local community, and particularly in the lives of children, have been very interested in what we've been trying to do. On a personal level, there's been some people who completely understand it and love it and support the idea, and there have been those who are somewhat tentative, right? My own wife has been initially, she's been very supportive all along. She was somewhat tentative about the actual humanitarian service and what we do. It can be a little overcoming sometimes for some people, a little almost threatening per se, in that a lot of humanitarian service retreats or missions, you don't necessarily have a direct relationship to the people involved. You might meet some people, you might spend a little time with them, but we go and we spend 2 or 3 days with kids, and we're trying to, more than just building them a building, right? We're trying to make a direct impact in their lives and help them, change their thought processes of what their life is and what it can be. And so that can be a little overwhelming sometimes for some people. For some people it's easier to go swing a hammer than it is to go and sit down. And sometimes, to be frank, sometimes you're mobbed by many children all at once, and it can be a little overwhelming. But it's amazing. It's amazing and it's beautiful. So my wife was a little bit tentative about that factor until in July we were in Costa Rica and went to visit the orphanage that we'll be working with in November and moving forward. And she had the same experience of these children opening their arms to her and extending unconditional love, immediately bonded with those children. Immediately there was a very amazing experience. Her motherly instinct kicked in, and she wanted to make everything all right. There were children who were maybe ill or perhaps had some sort of disability. There was, children who were upset and didn't want to eat and things like that. And she, her motherly instinct kicked in, and she wanted to make everything right. So much so that, we left and she wanted to adopt all of them, right? And which is fantastic and amazing and noble, but not all of us can do that all the time, right? And so our objective as Elevate is to become friends and mentors to the children. If a guest ultimately decides that they would like to adopt one of those children, that is, that's going to be their decision, right? That's not our overall objective. Is just to become their friends and mentors and to be involved with them. I should mention that we do return back to our same destinations so that our guests have opportunities in the future, to go back and visit the same children, particularly if they've decided to formulate a more long-term relationship with some of the children. And so it was an amazing experience, my wife was nervous about it up front, but now she's 100% gung-ho and 100% on board with what we're doing, and understands what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it.